Director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle, we are looking back, and what he told us, I am still in deep shock and pain. I didn't even have the chance to hug my parents one last time. My parents did not deserve this. Those were the few words that Rob Reiner, the youngest daughter, could utter after witnessing the tragic scene behind the villa's doors. According to the latest revelations from the FBI, this case is extremely complex. From Nick's threatening appearance at a Christmas party to the change in his schizophrenia treatment protocol just weeks before the murder occurred. And finally, the key factor is the simmering tension over the will and inheritance rights, the potential motive that led him to strike his own parents. Where exactly did director Rob and his wife pass away? What truly happened inside that house? And what sentence will Nick Reiner face for his crime? New details are forcing investigators to reopen the entire crime scene file. This is not merely a family tragedy, but the inevitable consequence of a series of ignored warnings, leading directly to a tragedy with no way back. That Saturday evening should have ended perfectly with warm Christmas wishes. According to FBI reports, just before the tragedy occurred, Nick Reiner had attended a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien with his parents. However, from the moment Nick appeared, the atmosphere of the party began to feel out of sync. Amidst elegant guests in sophisticated suits, Nick Reiner appeared in a hoodie, looking as out of place as a homeless person. His behavior quickly became abnormal. Nick walked around the room, staring at everyone and repeatedly asking bizarre questions in a disorganized manner. "Are you famous? Are you a celebrity?" He made everyone terrified, an investigator recounted. It wasn't the typical loud drunkenness. It was a manifestation of a loss of control. Escalating tension quickly led to an argument between Nick and his parents right at the party. Guests began to flock toward them as the exchange of words grew increasingly heated. And then, in a sudden decision, Rob Reiner and his son left the party midway. No one expected that this would be their last public appearance. Only a few days later, on December 14th, tragedy struck at their private home in Los Angeles. It was there that the legendary director Rob Reiner and his wife were found to have drawn their last breaths. But the most painful part was that the first person to witness it was their youngest daughter, Rob Reiner. As she stepped through the living room door, Rob Reiner was confronted with a horrific sight. Amidst a terrifyingly silent space lay the bodies of her parents. The cold smell of iron mixed into the thick air made reality feel suffocating. Romy stood frozen, her entire body shaking violently. Her vision blurred, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to collapse as her brain refused to accept the brutal truth. The immense shock caused her heart rate to spike, her legs gave way, and she nearly fainted right at the scene. Only the final instinct for survival and absolute bewilderment kept her from sinking completely into darkness, helping her pull herself up to make a desperate cry for help. As soon as the FBI's rapid response team approached the scene, Rob Reiner completely broke down. There was no more restraint or the vague premonitions from before. The ultimate agony erupted into sobbing cries. In a state of panic, Romy screamed through her sobs, "It's Nick! No one else could have done this but Nick!" Romy's direct accusation at the scene served as undeniable evidence. Although the police had not yet gathered full proof, the desperate assertion from the daughter immediately turned Nick Reiner into the #1 suspect. In fact, Romy had previously been very resentful when Nick moved into their parents' compound. But to Romy, that proximity brought no sense of peace. It only made the existing fear greater than ever. Yet, Romy understood the root cause. She knew her parents brought Nick back hoping they could supervise him closely. It was a choice born out of love, and also the choice that left her with unbearable remorse. Before the incident occurred, Romy had expressed her anger toward Nick many times, and only found common ground with Jake, the eldest brother. Now, when everything is too late, both Romy and Jake are stunned. They are not shocked because the event was unexpected, but because the tragedy actually happened in the very place they feared most. But was the party that night merely a communication mishap? Or was it the alarm bell for a predestined tragedy? According to investigators, about a month before the incident, doctors had proceeded to change Nick Reiner's treatment protocol. This adjustment was still in the experimental phase aimed at stabilizing his mood. However, instead of positive progress, Nick's condition grew increasingly severe. Agitation episodes occurred more frequently, emotions fluctuated violently, and behavior became extremely unpredictable. The mockumentary, seemingly a riff on the style of his dad's masterpiece, This Is Spinal Tap. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the group. Sounds like great creatures. TMZ revealed that Nick Reiner had recently undergone treatment at a high-end rehab facility in Los Angeles. But that wasn't the only time. Throughout his life, Nick had entered and exited rehab centers nearly 20 times. There were periods when he fell into homelessness, living on the fringes of society despite coming from one of Hollywood's most powerful families. Experts assess that substance abuse exacerbated Nick's existing mental health issues, particularly schizophrenia. This illness is often accompanied by symptoms such as paranoia, hallucinations, disorganized speech, and loss of behavioral control. When these manifestations combine with stimulants, the risk of an outbreak increases significantly. In that context, a key legal detail was presented. Nick Reiner is expected to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. This is a rare defense strategy, but not unfamiliar in particularly serious cases. Nick Reiner lived in his parents' guest house in Brentwood, a necessary arrangement. However, Nick's past was always a series of red flags, uncontrollable rages that made every effort futile. Not stopping at psychological issues, new details also reveal another dark corner of Nick Reiner's motive: greed and jealousy over assets. According to the FBI, Nick had long-standing bitter conflicts with his parents regarding inheritance issues. He believed that the benefits were uneven and that he was being treated unfairly. Nick frequently voiced reproaches, blaming his parents for not providing for him adequately, even though the family owned a massive fortune in Hollywood. Gradually, this turned into hatred, as Nick believed he was being sidelined from the clan's wealth. Living in the guest house right next to the main building gave Nick the opportunity to observe and understand every gap in his parents' daily routines. The toxic combination of mental illness and obsession with money created a perfect storm. In Nick's distorted mind, eliminating his parents was perhaps an extreme way for him to seize what he believed rightfully belonged to him. Now, as the pieces gradually emerge, from the change in medication to the failed efforts, the most painful question is no longer what Nick did, but could this tragedy have been prevented if the warning signs hadn't been missed? And if the answer is yes, then the price paid for that delay was indeed too high. By the morning of December 18th, the legal curtain officially closed on all doubts. Nick Reiner was indicted and appeared in court on 2 charges, with particularly serious aggravating circumstances. That was the first time Nick Reiner appeared in public, and that image caused the entire courtroom to fall into a nameless silence. Nick entered looking terrifyingly haggard. His body was gaunt, his face sallow, his gaze cold and gloomy, staring straight ahead as if no longer connected to the world around him. No expression, no confused gestures, no panic, no resistance. He was handcuffed and shackled. Throughout the hearing, Nick Reiner spoke only 3 words. "Yes, Your Honor." Nick did not counter, did not claim innocence, and expressed no emotion. He even voluntarily waived his right to a speedy arraignment. The preliminary hearing for the case is set for January 7, 2026. But for many, that day in court was enough to portray the portrait of a man who had been self-destructing long